Hi, this is Ray Esposito, and in this video we'll discuss the idea that every dollar really does count, a truism whose simplicity masks its greater implications. The concept behind every dollar counts is simple, so simple in fact that it's often overlooked. But in this presentation we'll demonstrate why a single dollar loss can have a butterfly effect that can make or break a business. We'll see the impact of losing just $13 a day, and we'll examine the margin erosion caused by a single lost item. But mostly we'll show why the theme that every dollar counts should be more than just a passing thought in your prevention program. Business is an organism. It lives, breathes, moves, grows, withers, and sometimes dies. In all those moving parts, our focus mostly remains on the big things, those that carry the weight to make or break us. Loss prevention is no different, and the majority of our attention is rightly focused on the big issues and the big losses. But in that process, we often forget that the little things do add up. We can easily overlook the fact that many profitability issues aren't the result of a single big thing, but the combination of all the small ones, much like the way single drops of water have the power to erode the rock they wash against. So we'll start with the big picture, the monsoon so to speak, and then work our way down to the power of those single raindrops. According to the National Retail Security Survey, U.S. retailers lost an average of 1.38% of their sales last year. That's only 1.5 cents on each dollar sold, and it doesn't sound like a lot until we consider that all those pennies added up to over 44 billion of lost retail dollars. And consider that retailers without LP programs fare far worse, losing an average of 4 to 6% of their sales. The causes of loss aren't a mystery. There are only 3 of them. And according to the Department of Commerce, a third of businesses will fail because of employee theft, and nearly 95% of all retailers have been the target of organized retail crime. In fact, loss is so much a part of the retail landscape that we gave it its own name. In retail, we call those lost dollars shrink. So before we move on to the dollars and cents of loss, let's quickly define shrink. Simply put, shrink is the loss of merchandise due to theft and error, and like its definition, the formula for calculation is simple and straightforward. We compare the difference of the merchandise we should have on hand, our book inventory, with the merchandise we actually have on hand, our physical inventory. We then divide the retail value of the lost or missing merchandise by the total retail sales during the time period it was lost. The result is a single percentage number that we call shrink. And as we said earlier, the average retailer lost about 1.3% of their sales last year. So how important are these losses? Well, consider that every year companies go out of business. Not because they didn't sell enough, not because they didn't have a great concept or product, not because they didn't work hard, but simply because they could not control their losses, or worse, didn't recognize the shrink until it was too late. And often companies without a loss prevention program or effort are simply arranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Retail is, after all, a difficult business. Success can be fleeting, and it doesn't take much to put the ship in peril. And here's how it can happen on losses as small as $13 a day. We'll keep the maths and finances simple, but we'll base them on actual retail operational percentages. Imagine you start a business, a retail store, with $100,000 in startup. Perhaps that's a loan or your life savings. You know you have a great business model, and in fact, for every dollar spent on product, you'll make $2 in sales. But you also know you have to spend some of your $100,000 on operating costs. So let's see this model in action before we take out some of the shrink. In your financial plan, you start with your $100,000, and from it you set aside $30,000 for payroll and benefits. You also need the $20,000 for operating costs, things like rent, electric, and taxes. So you're left with $50,000 to invest in your product, which as we said will sell for $100,000 or 100% markup. And those sales will allow you to continue on into your next selling year. This is a nice sustainable business plan. And then reality arrives. And let's assume it arrives in the form of the average shrink for a company without an LP program. So your company loses about 10% of its product, which is a little less than 5% of sales, a number which many large companies live with, and one that for this business model is only about $13 a day. So in our actual balance sheet, we can see the impact of that dollar an hour daily loss on our profits. We still have our 100,000 startup, we still deduct for our payroll and operations, and we still start with our 50,000 in product. But now 5,000 of that product disappears or shrinks. As a result, we are left with $45,000 in product, which we sell for $90,000. We carry that $90,000 into our next selling year. In year 2, we begin with our $90,000 in sales. We still have to deduct our costs because they haven't changed. And now we have $40,000 remaining to purchase product. But again, we lose the same percentage of product to shrink, and though it may seem like we're doing better because $4,000 is only $10 a day in loss, we still are left with only $36,000 in merchandise to sell, and that $36,000 provides a second year sales of $72,000. At the start of our third year, we have our $72,000 from sales, and we still have our operating costs. Now we begin with $22,000 in inventory, $2,000 of which is lost to shrink, leaving us with the potential for just under $40,000 in sales this year. Are you starting to see the possibility for bad news? Well, the answer is you should, because at the end of year 3, the dream is over. Our operating costs exceed our financial resources in sales, so though we worked on 100% markup selling a great product, the $13 a day loss forces us to close our doors. And for many business owners, they will never truly understand how it all went so wrong. And yes, although this is a very simplified mathematical version, it really is just a matter of zeros. The more zeros in your sales plan, the more tolerance for dollars lost. But as you can see in the chart, the rate of loss, that 4.7% of sales, whether $13 or $1,300, has the same results. And the more important truth is, we don't own a money tree, and every dollar loss has to be recouped from somewhere if the business is to operate according to plan. The reason every dollar counts is because each one has an impact on margin, and margin is the key to the health of a business operation. Often the culprit is not big losses, but simple margin erosion, because those predicted margins or profits is how we plan and how we forecast. If they are off, then so is our business plan. So let's take a quick and simple look at how margin is affected by a single product line loss of one item, or put another way, how many like items do we need to sell to make up for the one that we lost? Let's imagine a single item costs you 30 cents and that the cost to sell that item, its share of the overhead, is 20 cents. That means that the total cost of goods sold is 50 cents, and like our $13 a day model, you sell that item on 100% markup or a 50% gross margin. A pretty good number for any retailer, actually. So from your planning sheet, you know that for every dollar you spend, it means $1 in profit. Perfect, because if you spend $1 million, you'll get back your million plus another million in profit. It would seem like losing a single 50-cent item would not mean too much, right? But by examining our chart, we can see exactly how it affects our margins and ultimately our financial planning. To recoup that 50% margin we started with before the single loss, we need to sell 102 additional items. Of course, again, this is simple math, and in reality, we may keep our heads above water longer than the model demonstrates, but in truth, not much longer. And there are places we can find money to continue our operations and offset these losses. We can take out more loans, have less product, increase our prices, operate with fewer employees on lower salaries with fewer benefits. And those reductions work for a while. But if, and only if, we solve the underlying problem and accept that in business, every dollar really does count. That's why at LPI we believe that loss prevention expertise, strong programs, and the right plan can help the retail industry grow and prosper, and we invite you to explore our ebooks and articles to learn more and to ultimately operate a more profitable business. And of course, we're here to help through our full-service programs, evaluations, and consultation. You can find us on the web at www.lpinnovations.com, call us at 877-574-6682, or send an email to solutions@lpinnovations.com.